financial transactions without the need of centralized bank. We know this objective. This is achieved by keeping all transactions in a private, distributed public ledger, verified voluntarily by millions of people on the internet. The public ledger is called the blockchain. Now, the question is, first question is, what is a ledger? A ledger is a kind of course, a ledger is a ledger. So here I am showing you a ledger. So this is a very traditional thing, that there is a book and we keep on writing things, like writing the transactions and all, and these things have been done by for several years. I mean, it's that people know that this is ledger. People use this for accounting and all. Now, what was understood by Mr. Nakamoto is that when we make a financial transaction, suppose A sends some money to B. It's bad actually. Anyway, whatever. So if A sends some money to B, now the physical transaction of money is one thing, but if we can kind of fix the transaction in a certain way, then also we can and keep the record so that no one can change the records. Then also this transfer of money, that thing also will have the same effect as a transfer of money. Let us start here by this example. Now, suppose there are three people, A, B, and C. Now, see, in the beginning, suppose A has an amount of 50 rupees, and B and C do not have any money. And suppose A sends 35 rupees to B. Now, what can happen is that A can send some token, that is actually the currency notes and all that, to B, and then B will have that. And once A has transferred those tokens to B, then he cannot use those tokens to transfer money to C, because he has simply given those tokens to B. But otherwise also there is another way which is not so obvious, that if we can keep a ledger, such a ledger where an open ledger that can be seen by everyone, so then and record these transactions in such a way that they are, so to say, immutable. These are called immutable. Really is not good actually. Anyway, so it's so if we have a thing like this, then I don't know. So then this ledger will play the same role as that of the currency note. How? For example, A gives some money to B, so that is, let us suppose that is 35 rupees. Then A again says to C that I am giving you 20 rupees. Now, if these ledgers are visible to all and they cannot be tampered with, then C will simply take this ledger. So suppose this is a closed system and ABC cannot have any money from outside this system, then C will tell A that, look, you started with 50 rupees and you have already given 35 rupees to B, and then how can you give me 20 rupees? You simply do not have that money. So that is the effect that we would like to achieve. Now, see, here we are assuming that this ledger is kept in a centralized place, and A, B, C each has access to this ledger. That is our assumption. But let us suppose we remove this central location, this central. So I have an open ledger, but it is not a centralized. This is a centralized ledger. It is not decentralized ledger. Now we have a distributed open ledger. We are not keeping the open ledger anywhere. We have just distributed that to all the people, and periodically we synchronize them, and then, well, everyone will have a copy of that ledger, and then he can decide whether a transaction is valid or not. Up to this point, you will see that everything is well and good, but the question that keeps on nagging is that why no one can tamper with these ledger and copies of the ledger and create confusion in the network. As you see that if that happens, then it is going to have a disastrous effect, because then the whole financial system will break down. Now that is what was proposed by Satoshi Nakamoto in this Bitcoin blockchain system or structure, whatever you call that, which is quite surprising because it doesn't use much of any new idea. It uses known ideas, but in a innovative way, and it is quite courageous to use that innovative way. What is said is that we will have when this transaction happens, we will have a storage where we will store these transactions one by one. We will store these transactions, and then after some time, these transactions must be verified. So we need verification, and then they should be in a way locked in such a way that no one can change it. Now the question is how we will be able to do this. Now that is where the idea of hash function comes in, and that is what we will discuss in today's lecture. So what I do from here, I will jump to the definition of hash functions and discuss the properties of hash functions and security of hash functions and all that. Then towards the end, I will come back to this problem, because you will see that there are a few terms here. People will talk about miners. It's not working. People will talk about miners. People will talk about many other things. People will talk about, if you see a popular book on blockchain, and there are many such books, you will see that people are talking about a difficult mathematical problem. We'll say that there are some entities such as miners who have to solve a difficult mathematical problem, and if he can prove to all that he has solved the problem, then he gets some benefit in terms of bitcoins from the Bitcoin blockchain system, and that's quite considerable, and that block is introduced in the blockchain. Now, what is it all about? What is the difficult mathematical problem, and why is it is like that? So that is what we will be discussing in today's lecture. Before that, I'll take a few minutes break to see whether I can share by using some other process so that I can do better annotations. So just give me a short time to check out that thing. I'm having a difficulty in, actually I've never used this Google thing, and I'm having a difficulty in finding out the right thing. So just wait a moment. I'll see what to do. Can you see my screen also? OneNote.
Yeah.
You can see the OneNote, right? So I will transfer these
Yes, sir.
slides
Yes,
to
I will do
OneNote.
that.
I'll add a notebook on this and transfer these slides to OneNote, and then I'll use OneNote. It will be better. Yeah. So then I have to go to insert, file, come on, hi. Wait a moment. I have to go to. Well, you are able to you are seeing my whole file system. It doesn't matter. You are welcome. But for God's sake, where is it? Yeah, it is here. This is the one that we are talking about. Insert as printout. Yes, OneNote is much better. So I will, yes, these annotations are there, but I will be able to do much a better job, I believe. As if I cannot annotate, I don't like. All right, so let us come here and enlarge this slide. Now it should be visible, right?
Yeah,
is it
yeah.
visible? Yeah, wonderful. Then I can actually on OneNote I can write very smoothly. So that's why I am using this. All right. So see, I can do a lot of writing. Okay. So we will be talking about cryptographic hash functions here, and okay. So we will ask a question that what are cryptographic hash functions. So please keep this thing in mind that when you are talking about blockchains, the first thing that people say that there is a transaction pool. So many transactions are happening. They are kept somewhere, and there is something called a miner. There is something called a miner, and there is something called a difficult mathematical problem. So it seems that there is some difficult mathematical problem that a miner has to solve in order to uh, get the right to insert that particular block in the blockchain, and that miner has to. It is guaranteed that the miner will have to uh, invest a lot of money to solve that problem. And so when he gets that as an incentive, he will get back some bitcoins, which is incentive enough for him to keep on trying to uh, solve that problem and like that. So the question is, what is that problem? Now, in one word, without any suspense, let me tell you that problem is finding out certain values of a function, and those are precisely the hash functions. Now, I would like to address the question that what is a hash function and why it is so difficult to solve. So a hash function is a cryptographic. It's called a cryptographic hash function. A cryptographic hash function is a function that provides assurance of data integrity. A hash function is used to construct a short fingerprint of some data. Even if the data is stored in an insecure place, its integrity can be checked from time to time by recomputing the fingerprint and verifying that the fingerprint has not changed. Actually, it's a bit mixed. So it is like this, that Suppose H is a hash function. It is typically a function from a set X, which is very big, a very large set, to a set Y, large but not large, but small compared to X. So we have a setup like this, that we are talking about functions that are defined from a very large set or space to a small space, comparatively small space, but that is also reasonably large. Now, how does this X look like? X is a set of binary strings, and we can safely consider X as 0, 1 star. That is the star closure of 0, 1, which means that it is a set of all binary strings. So it's an infinite set. And Y is also a set of, let us say, set of all strings of 160-bit long strings. So there are 2 to the power 160 many elements in Y. So the number of elements in Y is 2 to the power 160. So on one hand, we have, on one side, we have a set which is infinite in size, and on the other side we have a Y which is also a set Y, which is also a fairly large set, because I cannot enumerate 2 to the power 160 many strings, but still compared to infinity it is small. Now we would like to construct functions from X to Y with certain properties. Now I will come to those properties, because those properties are interesting. So we need these properties. Yeah, it is better. Now see, we need these properties. All right, so see, so now I have this X, which is potentially infinite, and Y, which is smaller, finite. And I have a function from X to Y. Let us write it over here, draw it over here. So I have this big space X and smaller set Y, and I have this function H. Now I say that H must have these three properties. So I will consider three problems. One problem is called pre-image. The other problem is called second pre-image. And the last problem is called collision. So what is the pre-image problem? The problem is that you give me an element Y belonging to Y and ask me to find at least one X such that Hx is equal to Y. Now, anyone will say that what is the big deal about this? Because here I know that X is infinite and Y is finite. So definitely many elements in X are get mapped to a single y. In fact, there ought to be infinitely many elements in here, infinitely many elements in X that get mapped to y. Then what is the problem? The problem is that it is strange though that there are certain cases where one uh, a computation in one direction is easy, the other direction is small, direction is difficult. So we have to find a function of that type. Now one little inexact example is like this, that suppose I have a needle and I go to a sea beach and throw the needle somewhere without looking where I am throwing, and then so that direction it is easy. I have a needle and I have thrown it in the on the sea beach, and then someone tells me that now find the needle again back from the sea beach. Now I know that the needle exists, but finding that needle on that sea beach is going to be very, very difficult problem. Similarly, think of this as a needle. Think of this as a needle that you are throwing here. You know that it exists, or rather the other way around, think that you take an X. Actually, it's I don't draw exact parallel, but this actually is like that. So this one wayness has to be guaranteed, that given Y you should not be able to find X. Now there is a slight variation of this problem. See, these are very interesting in the sense that there are slight variations and the problems are different. Now this problem is called second pre-image. This means that this time you are given given an X. This time you are given an X in X. So you have the pre-image set X and image set Y. You are given an X and you are allowed to use this H because this H is public. So Hx. So you get Y because I have told you that Hx is equal to Y. All right. Now the point is that someone tells you that find another pre-image. So that is the second pre-image. Find another pre-image X prime with X not equal to X prime and Hx equal to Hx prime equal to Y. So second pre-image problem asks me to find another pre-image which maps to the same thing. This. Now this also should be hard if this hash function has to be secured. Finally, we come to another problem that is called collision. Which states that given a hash function, it should be difficult, it should be actually impossible rather I should say computationally impossible, because mathematicians will say that why it's not impossible because it is not a one-one function. So given a hash function, find x not equal to x prime such that hx equal to hx prime. Find it. If you can find it, then you have found a collision. So these are the three problems that people study when people study construct hash functions, and all these three problems must be very difficult to solve, so much so that these problems must be infeasible within reasonable computational power. All right, so this is the security of hash functions. Now, we will discuss very soon that how it gets linked to the blockchain mining, Bitcoin mining problem. Just one moment, let me see that what we have here. Just one moment. All right. All right, so see, if we go back a little and find a little bit of empty space here, so I think I can do it here. All right, so all right, so it's here, so I can use this space. Now see, what happens is that when you are talking about a Bitcoin kind of blockchain, so let me call it a Bitcoin blockchain. Now there are many participants in this network. Let us call them A1, A2, A3 and all that. And among them some are miners also, so doesn't matter. Now see, there are many transactions. So there is something called a transaction pool. See, all the transactions are getting compiled here, like the transactions may be T1, T2, like this, up to the TK. These transactions are compiled here. Now, this blockchain system has got some specification. This blockchain algorithm, each blockchain algorithm will have its own specification, that once a certain number of transactions are stored, then we have to create a block out of it. Now, who gets to create a block and who gets to insert that block in the existing blockchain? Let us assume that we have the existing a kind of blockchain over here, but here I have to insert this. Who gets to insert it? Now, for that, what people say that is a Bitcoin blockchain says that there is a hash function, and you have to put some more things on this hash function and some random values and all that. Now, combine all these things. So this will be one segment of the input, and then after that put some random number which are called nonce. Keep on changing that till you get a hash value h, such that hx belongs to a certain domain which is a subset of y. Alright, I am not going for specific criterion, I am going for the basic idea. So what I am saying and what is said is that, so you take the transactions and also that is one segment and some timestamps and all that, but then you are allowed to change other components of the input, which are called, I mean, ultimately each instance will be a nonce, that is number used only once. So you just keep on doing that till you get your hash value within a particular region. This region, the size of this region is specified by this Bitcoin blockchain, or so to say any open blockchain or public blockchain algorithm. That algorithm will specify that size of D, what is D, and this size and this set may keep on changing from time to time. So it is not a constant. Now let us look at this from the point of view of our definition of hash function and secured hash function. As we noted here, that if you have a hash function, then this pre-image must be difficult. All right, so wait a moment, and second pre-image also must be difficult. All right, so suppose let us talk about pre-image. Yes, so suppose I come here. So suppose I tell someone that, okay, this is the hash function, you have to find the hash value of this, but such that the hash value is equal to y0, a particular y, let us say y0 belonging to the range of the hash function, find an x. So you have a part that has got something to do with the number of transactions that are hashing, trying to fix, make a block, and you are allowed to change another part of it, which is a nonce, number used only once. Keep on changing this till you get this. Now this is going to be a very difficult problem. This difficult problem because this hash function is assumed to be secure and therefore it must be pre-image resistant. So in this case, I am saying this D is a singleton that is equal to a singleton set y0. It's a difficult problem, but I can make this problem very easy if I say that D is equal to y. If D is equal to y means the complete range, the total range of the hash functions. If I say this, then we see that it is easy because I take any x, or I have this x and I just don't have to do anything. I take any number, I hash it, and of course it is going to be in y. So we have got two extreme ends. So this part is infeasible. It has to be infeasible if the hash function is difficult. Hash function is secure, and I would be working with secure hash functions. And this part is going to be, it's very easy. So D is somewhere in between, and that the size of D has to be chosen based on the computational capabilities of the users. So this is the essence of what is known in blockchain literature or Bitcoin blockchain literature as proof of work. The idea is that we will choose a D which is a subset of y and which is not equal to y, but reasonably large, so that we can assure a certain amount of work has to be done to get an image inside y. And since the hash function is secure, the person who is mining for this to show that proof of work should not be able to get any extra advantage from another person. This is because, again, there is this connects to security notions of hash functions. All right, so this is the idea behind proof of work. Now, if we look at these three properties, the problems, pre-image, second pre-image, and collision, we will see that they have relations among each other. So let us quickly discuss those relations. So if I have an algorithm that solves second pre-image, then I can solve collision. Why? So suppose that I can solve second pre-image. Then I can then what I can do? I choose an x belonging to x, find out hx which is equal to y. Since I have an algorithm to solve second pre-image, I can find x prime which is in x such that hx prime is equal to y, and this existence of the algorithm for second pre-image guarantees that x is not equal to x prime. Therefore, I have found two distinct points where the hash value is same. So that means that if a hash function is not second pre-image resistant, then it is not collision resistant. But if it is, or in other words, if it is collision resistant, then it is second pre-image resistant. Let us see whether it is correct or not. So what we have proved is that if a hash function is not second pre-image resistant, that is, there is an algorithm to compute second pre-image, let us remove this. If a hash function is not second pre-image resistant, implies that the hash function the hash function is not collision resistant. All right, so suppose I call this statement P and this statement Q. So that means that if a hash function is not second pre-image resistant, that is P implies Q, this is equivalent to saying that negation of Q implies negation of P, which means that a hash function is collision resistant implies that hash function is second pre-image resistant. So this is something that we can say. But see, even here, if we want to say pre-image and collision, then what is happens? So suppose if a hash function is collision resistant, then is it pre-image resistant? See where I am driving to. But we are interested in pre-image resistance. But there is no very straightforward result on this. This is very strange though, but this is correct. Now, there are some proofs about this that if you have an algorithm to compute pre-image, then what is the what kind of algorithm we can construct to compute collision. So these reductions are studied here. So see, first of all, we study the algorithms of find pre-image, find second pre-image and all that, and then ultimately the reduction formulas. The comparison of security criteria. The collision to second pre-image, the thing that I have told you, and after that collision to pre-image. Now, there are ideas of randomized algorithms here, like 1Q algorithm or in general epsilon Q algorithms. So these ideas are there and those are available in Stinson's book. I will not be, I'm pointing out these areas of study, and so that's all. So these things have to be studied. I will today, so the question now is that how do we construct hash functions? So that's one question. But before that, we'll talk about a little bit about another model which is called random oracle model. This we ought to study this. Yeah, random oracle model. So what is a random oracle model? Now, as we have seen that we are interested in designing hash functions, but we have not designed any hash functions yet. But we are kind of talking about the hash functions. So random oracle model is also in the same spirit. So this model for studying hash functions was proposed by two cryptographers, Bellare, Mihir Bellare, and Philip Rogave. Around 1991-ish. So around that time, around. And it is sometimes called Bellare-Rogave random oracle model. Random oracle model is an idealized model for a hash function which attempts to capture the concept of an ideal hash function. If a hash function h is well designed, it should be the case that only efficient way to determine the value of hx for a given x is actually to evaluate the function h at the value x. This should remain true even if many other values of many other values of hx1, hx2 have already been calculated. Now see here, this is also another important point and also from the blockchain point of view. So what it says is that if a hash function is well designed, then the only way to compute this value is to evaluate the function h at x here, but nothing else. You should not be able to find a shortcut. So see, suppose there is a shortcut, then imagine the benefit that the miner will have, because he knows which value he has to choose. So he will be just one moment.
Sir, you please unmute yourself, sir.
Can you hear me
Yeah.
now? Probably yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. See, so this is the problem thing. So what it says is that even if you have got many instances, so you do not see this is very serious, that if you have an H, this H is known to everyone. H is known to everyone, is known to everyone. So we are talking about a function. So there is a circuit and its design and everything is known to everyone. All right, and everyone can evaluate that. I mean, so someone can sit down and calculate many random strings, as I've written here, some capital N and like that, and keep on calculating this hx1, hx2, like that. He can keep on doing this, and he can put them in a list, store them in a list, and analyze them, try to find out some pattern. But even after doing that with a huge amount of data, so this can go to, even it can go to some 2 to the power 50. Even if you have that, you should not be able to predict a pair X and HX without actually going through this circuit with input X. So this is what random oracle model says, that you have to achieve that. Is it possible to achieve that? The answer is actually no, because anyway, I mean, like hash function, the circuits are known and everything, people will analyze that. So once a while, people might be able to find a shortcut, and then he will be able to find the many things. He may be able to find a pre-image, he may be able to find a second pre-image or a collision, or find out some shortcut to calculate a hash value and all that. But it should be amazingly difficult, and that is what a designer must be able to assure. So see, I have not designed any hash function. I am just telling you that what has to be done to construct a hash function. Now let me, I thought I will be talking about a bit about collision, but before that, let us go, since we are in a flow, so let us see what is done to construct a hash function. Now that is again curious, because it is not difficult, it is actually easy. So at the heart of any hash function construction, we have this. All right. It is called iterated hash functions. Here also iterated hash functions. So what we do is that we take a small function. This has got also a very interesting philosophy. I mean, like, if you are not very serious, then I can tell you. If you are very serious and say that I am talking meaningless things, then I cannot help. But anyway, I just want to give the way I think about this. So it is like that. Suppose there is a coaching center which has got a name. All right, a big coaching center, and it trains students for JEE. Now what it does is that it has got several subjects in between, like physics, mathematics, chemistry, and all that. Then there are many sections there, so there are small teachers and all that. So the coaching center can be thought of as built by the capacity of these teachers. Coaching center can be the capacity of the teachers. If all the teachers are performing very well and there is no problem, or even if they are not performing well but the students are good, then the credit will go to the coaching center, CC, the coaching center. But if they are not doing well, then it must be that one of the teachers are, coaching center is okay, but one of the teachers are not performing well, one or a group of teachers are not performing well, identify them, remove them from the coaching center and get some good teacher. So whomever you are removing, you really do not know whether they are bad or not, or you probably know that they are bad because let us say it's a very cruel system. I mean, it's cruel. I mean, it's not very kind. It is not kind. It is not nice system. I'm not defending this system, but I am telling you the reality. You will accuse this person and tell him to go away, and you will include another person whom you think is good. He will be good as long as many students are getting JEE, getting good All India ranks. If they don't, then again you throw them away. The people whom you were telling are good people some 2 days ago or 2 years ago, and then recruit some more people. So you are saying that your coaching center is good. There is no problem in the coaching center. There is no problem in the students. All the problems are with these small guys who are teaching and earning their living. So like that, in this system, we have the small guys, which is a compress function. This compress function is a function from 0, 1 raised to the power m plus t to 0, 1 raised to the power m. That means that you are considering strings of length m plus t and transforming them to strings of length m. And then there is a way of lifting this function to a hash function, a full-blown hash functions, where the idea is like this, that when you have data or message or whatever you want to hash, this is the data. Cut this data into t-length strings and use a IV, that is a initial value or initialization vector, whatever people say. Let us say initial value. Put an initial value here, which is of length m. This is of length m. So this length m will go over here, and this length t will come from here to here. So you have a compress function takes m plus t length things to m length things. So compress will do that. This is a poor coaching center teacher. He has to do whatever he is getting. So he has got that, he's put there. So then this guy will go here. The next segment will come from here. Then another teacher will make Z2. Like that, after several rounds, you will get ZR, which is called the hash value. Now, this principle was formalized in a more elaborate way by two famous cryptographers, Merkle and Damgaard, to give rise to Merkle-Damgaard construction. I'm not again going into the detailed construction things, that how things are padded, how things are kind of broken up and like that, but this Merkle-Damgaard construction is essentially the same. It's essentially an iterated construction technique. And then you have a proof. Now this is amazing. So what is the proof? The proof says that suppose you have a compress function from here to here, which is collision resistant, then the hash function is collision resistant. Wow. I can only say a big wow. Who says that the compress function is collision resistant? No one. It's a claim. We claim that the compress function is collision resistant, and we then have an elaborate method doing this, that, and all that, which is difficult and more difficult to prove. And after that, we come up on a theorem. We produce a theorem and says that if compress is collision resistant, then the hash function is collision resistant. If compress is not collision resistant, then of course the hash function is not collision resistant. Then what do? We remove compress and get another compress function. So we remove the coaching center teacher and get another teacher, assuming him to be good, effective for JEE teaching. No, sorry, assuming this compress function to be collision resistant, the new compress function, and then carry on with that. Now, as I told you, there are page after page elaborate proofs, and if you look at Stinson's book, you will find page after page proofs, and it's actually very interesting to go through those proofs. It's a challenging task as well. Now, see, what is the history? This is where we land up. There hasn't been many successful hash functions in last 30 years. So as you see, the first hash function, one of the first, was proposed by Rivest. This is Ronald Rivest. So this is called MD4. MD stands for Message Digest. All right, so you have MD4 here. That was proposed sometime around 1990, and as you see that immediately after that MD5 was proposed. Why it was proposed? Because someone showed that MD4 is weak, and why it was shown to be weak? Most probably because its compression function had some problem, because all these are iterated hash functions. So MD5 was proposed in 1992-ish, and then the famous SHA was proposed by NIST. If you look into that, then you will find the history. This is SHA. SHA stands for Secure Hash Algorithm. All right. It was proposed, in fact, what was proposed was now called SHA-0. SHA-0, immediately after publication, SHA-0 was removed and was replaced by what is known as SHA-1. So it is somewhere around 93-ish. And interestingly, NIST never told anyone that why SHA-0 was removed. They said that there are some serious weaknesses of SHA-0, but they never disclosed the weakness, or they never disclosed any weakness of SHA-0. Although people later on found many weaknesses of SHA-0, but they never knew that whether they have covered all the weaknesses or not. Then SHA-1 was proposed, and SHA-1 was considered as standard. Now, in the open literature in 1998, several weaknesses were found of SHA-1. Then, I have not discussed about birthday attack, but that discussion is also in my slides. Now, after that, Crypto 2004, SHA-0, collision of SHA-0 was found by Zhu. Now, by now you know what is a collision. They found that there is a collision. Now, why there was a collision? Must be because of some problems with the compress function. So remove the compress function, plug in another compress function, and possibly increase the length of the hash function, and that should do the work. That is most probably that they have done. And then more attacks on more collisions on MD5 was found, but SHA-1 was more or less untouched. By 2010, people knew that SHA-1 is also not secure, SHA-1 was considered insecure from 2010, more or less, and around 2012, it was 2012, 2013, people knew that it's not at all secure. Then people fell back to SHA-2, and SHA-2 means 4 hash functions: SHA-224, SHA-256, SHA-384, and SHA-512. This was approved as FIPS standard in 2002. People migrated from SHA-1 to SHA-2. Interestingly, the Bitcoin blockchain originally proposed the use of SHA-1 for its crypto uses, crypto primitives, including most probably the proof of work. I don't know the exact story, but it was SHA-1. So because Bitcoin blockchain was proposed around 2007 and 8, and that time SHA-1 was considered secure. Now all these ciphers all these hash functions are constructed by using the Merkle-Damgard iterated construction, and therefore the process of updating them is to increase the length of the message digest and to change the compression function. As I told you, that the compression functions are usually the weaknesses, and so they must be changed. The basic structure remains the same. So that's the story now. So SHA-2, now people talk about SHA-2. And people are now constructing SHA-2, migrating from SHA-1 to SHA-2, although knowing full well that SHA-2 is also going to fall sometime in the near future. And then in 2015, NIST approved another hash function which is called SHA-3. And what is interesting here is that SHA-3 is not an iterated hash function. It is based on another construction technique which is called a sponge construction. Sponge construction. And therefore it possibly doesn't have the weaknesses that are present in the iterated hash functions, but still we do not know what kind of weaknesses this sponge function might have. So that is roughly the story of hash functions, the security conditions, why those are important for proof of work calculations and evaluations, and what will happen if someone finds an easy way to show the proof of work rather than computing the function. So we are here. So that's more or less what we have for today. Now, what are the questions here? The first question is that, as we see, that proof of work for a blockchain depends on hash functions. Not only that, the data integrity depends on hash functions. So these are the two things for a blockchain, for any blockchain. The question is that, suppose today we use a blockchain, and after some time, the hash functions that we are using for data integrity or proof of work need to be replaced by some other hash functions due to their weaknesses. How we are going to do that without and how we are going to ensure the security of our security of our blockchain in such a long-term setup. These things, I believe, are very foundational questions on blockchains, and for that we need to study hash functions and other crypto primitives. And by this I will stop my lecture today, and I invite questions.
Thank you, sir, for the session. And here are some questions in the chat box. The first one is, when second pre-image is enough to imply collision, then what is the significance of both properties?
Yeah, because second pre-image implies collision, but collision does not imply second pre-image. Now the point is that collision is easier to show. I mean, if I can show collision, then I'm not showing second pre-image, but still collision is also dangerous, because I can then create two copies which have the same hash, that is the same message digest. So I can get someone's signature sign on one message one message digest, and then replace the copy and tell that you have signed this one. So I mean, if a signature is such that, I mean, for example, we are agreeing upon a draft, right? So suppose we are agreeing upon X. Now, if suppose by chance, so okay, like if it is second pre-image, so what I will do is that I will try to create an X prime which is not X, such that Hx is equal to Hx prime. All right, so that I will, while agreeing, I will agree with another person with this X and keep this thing with me, and later on I say that no, I did not agree on X, I agreed on X prime. So this is the danger of second pre-image. So it is of course dangerous, but for this I need more work. But I can also confuse a person if I can have a collision. That is, I don't know a priori which X I take, but if I can find two, let us say in this case X0 and X0 prime, which are not equal but have the same hash value, I don't, then also it is dangerous, because then I have a copy of this. Of course, this doesn't mean that I have a second pre-image, but still it's a weakness of the hash function. So I can make people confused basically.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question is whether hash function in data structure is equivalent to blockchain.
No. Hash function data structure is not blockchain. Hash function is a crypto primitive that is used in blockchain. So hash function is used for at different layers. First of all, proof of work, and then also for the integrity of the blocks, different transactions, for signatures. In many places, hash functions are used. So blockchain combines many things. Blockchain in itself will have, you have to have a distributed algorithm, a consensus algorithm, you have to have many signatures, you have to have many hashing and all that. Combining all these things, you have the blockchain. I'm talking about a very particular and important crypto primitive.
Okay, another one is where is D located? In the previous block or some other place?
That D is a domain. That is a specification that the algorithm will be specifying that, because it's something like you find me a hash value between these two numbers or something like that. So that is periodically updated by the algorithm itself. So it is a distributed algorithm that is supposed to from time to time specify the D, that range in which you have to find the hash value.
One more query related to the pre-image resistance. What is the meaning of pre-image resistance? Pre-image cannot be generated.
Yeah, pre-image means that pre-image resistance means this. That suppose you give me any image, any value y. This is x and x. So I have a hash function from this to this. Now, given a y, any y, where y belongs to this capital Y, I should not be able to find an x such that hx is equal to y with, I mean, like for all practical purposes. Like it should be computationally infeasible. Finding x such that hx equal to y should be computationally infeasible. That's the point here. Now, how it is infeasible, I mean, as I told you, at the core of this, the whole thing, you have several assumptions. You are probably assuming something about the compression function. You are assuming something about something else, somewhere we have assumptions there. But that is the best that we have. We don't have anything other than that.
So, thank you, sir. There are no more questions there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your nice lecture on cryptographic hash functions. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
And thank you all the participants also. We'll have a next session at 11:15. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and it was good to be able to present, and I hope that it was more or less.
So, we request your slides.
Yeah, I will prepare. I have to make some polishing of the slides, and I'll send the slides in a few
Okay,
days.
sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Bye bye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
So have we to give the attendance now, or will we give it after the second session?
Hello?
Should we give the attendance now, or we'll give it after the second lecture?
No, I have already circulated that in Google Forms.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Attendance is for every session.
Okay.
Okay. So you can fill the form. Okay.
Okay.
I have given that a Google form and WhatsApp group also. So you can give the attendance. Okay, we have 5 minutes break, then we'll meet at 11:15. Okay, thank you.